Overall equipment effectiveness is a wonderful tool for shop floor performance management. You can also use it quite well for planning or other managerial things, but let's focus in on the planning. We will need to slightly change the numbers though. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And today's video is on OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, but we'll specifically zoom in to its use in planning and how we then have to split up the OEE numbers a bit different than you might be used to. Now let's first start with the split that I see a lot. So you have your general categories of availability of the line, performance when it's running, and the quality of the product that is coming out. And these are all percentages. If you multiply them, you get your total OEE. In principle, what we're doing is we're measuring the number of good products that come out per total unit of time, so basically per 24 hours a day. And splitting it up in these three, it does give us really nice handles to check how production is doing, right? So the shop floor performance management, we of course want to know how many of our products that come rolling off the line are actually good. This is often checked only after we're really getting them off the line. So this might be a bit of a lagging indicator, good to keep it separate, but also very important because this one also talks about the cost of quality. So the cost of materials often involved, extra work, good one to have separated. Performance is when the line is running. It might be running at a lower speed, there might be some stops along the way, but they are basically part of your process. And it's good to also know how quick, how well your line is running when you assume that it's on, it is in production. And then you have availability. How much of our time is the machine not available to be producing in the first place? The main things here are just not being planned in at all or being in maintenance. And there are a lot of smaller categories. So there's a whole OEE breakdown underneath these three. And actually the easiest one is quality. There is usually only one under there, which is the quality percentage. But the other two, and if you read ahead, you will already have seen that I put a couple of double ones here. The others, they have quite a number of subcategories. So the availability, it has the line or the factory is closed totally. There is overcapacity, meaning that it's not planned in, but it is ready to do. Then you have your planned stops, which usually means planned maintenance stops. Routine stops, so this is cleaning, setup time, things like that. Cleaning sometimes gets pushed into the planned stops, but these are the routine things you do quite a lot. Then you have your supply problem, so it's not this line, it's some other line is preventing it from running. There are no people, there is no material or nowhere to put it. And then you have your breakdowns, so these are pretty long, often technical, pretty long stops of the machine because something went wrong. Now on the performance side, well, supply and breakdown, the same ones, they don't actually belong with performance. They formally have to go into the availability row. But I often see colleagues, students put them in this row because it feels so natural. And we'll get back to that because I think they're sort of right. Then we have short stops and speed, and this is what I was talking about, right? So speed is lower than your passport speed, and the short stops, they are basically those very small, not really breakdowns, so those very small machine stoppages. So these two are often measured together, but definitely these two, they determine the actual productive speed of your line. I mean, if every minute it stops for a couple of seconds here and there, that is basically so frequent in your whole production that for everybody except the line, the product, and maybe the operator, this is just part of how fast this line is going. That's why these two really are linked to performance. But then that supply and breakdown thing. Now I think that those people that put supply and breakdown with the performance part, they are also thinking a bit from the planning mindset. You see, there are really planned things. So when we close it, yeah, this is planned. Overcapacity is from the planners. The operator does not decide on this. Your planned maintenance is hopefully planned, other planned stops as well. Then your routine stops. Now, big cleanings are generally planned, but the smaller ones are often just part of the process. Changeover from product to product, if it happens within a run, is usually part of the process. So here's often a difference. There is part that we really plan, And there is also a part that we don't really plan. Now, supply errors, so the next machine not being able to take more product, or people or materials not being available to run your process, this is basically never planned. As are breakdowns. Now, you can of course plan for a percentage of breakdowns, but you don't plan ahead when you will have a big breakdown. They are determining the availability of your line, but your planning department can hardly take them into account. They can take them into account as an average percentage. So when we take part of our routine and also our supply and breakdown, so let's add a little bit, the routine setups, not the big cleanings, and this whole list, we have all of our unplanned things. So for the planners, this is performance. When you plan a line, you take into account that you have, for instance, 5% of breakdowns. You don't know if it will break down this hour, but you know that during a couple of days, there will be a number of hours of breakdown of the line. And if you want to make a realistic planning, these green ones, they are the big blocks you put into your plan. But this part of availability doesn't help planners. So if we take this whole part, then we can have a percentage that we put into our planning software, into our planning rosters, and say our line is only 80, 90% effective. So this is the actual speed we will plan into a block where we plan a line into production. So this is not the performance, because in real performance we only have short stop and speed, and not really routine stops like setup, supply problems and breakdowns. But for your planning department, but also for anyone who is interested in how much capacity do I have on a line, how to put things, different machines into a line and do a capacity breakdown where you say I have my bottleneck line, but the next line should have 10%, 20% more capacity. We are talking about this type of, let's call it planning performance. That is the important part. So not just the performance in our regular OEE, but the planned or the unplanned, let's say, performance number, that has to be 10, 20% higher than our bottleneck line. And that is very important, because especially those lines that are not our bottleneck line usually do not get the same amount of attention for these supply routine problems, and sometimes they even get less maintenance attention. So also these breakdown percentages play a much bigger role with these down the line machines. So when you're in a planning department, take this type of unplanned performance OEE into account. But that also means if you are in continuous improvement, performance excellence, make sure that you can make this distinction, make sure that your registration is good enough that you can give different actors within your organization the information that they need, because this is what your planning department needs. These original ones may be what your production needs. Your investment people will need a split somewhere here as well. These categories, they should be understood at least by performance excellence, continuous improvement, and split in such a way that the support departments can make optimal use of them. And for planning, that means get all the unplanned thingies, even if OEE usually puts them in availability, into a planned, unplanned stop for your OEE so that they can plan your lines in a realistic, effective way. Now, I hope that this split of planned, unplanned machine time losses gave you a couple of nice ideas to implement in your organization. If it did, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, if you have questions about these categories or any other OEE topic, don't forget to ask them in the comments. For now, I wish you the best of luck improving your machine availability, but at the least getting a real good, realistic sense of what they can do so that your planning is more correct. But also, as always, enjoy the improvement journey.